So guys, welcome back to Remove Before Race. Now I was going to do the walk around of the A35 here, but as you can see the car is just always bum rushed. This won't work. Let's go back to my place and do this instead. Whew, that's better. Back on home turf. It's a lot more peaceful and quiet here. I'm sure no one will miss the car for a few minutes. So guys, here is the newest entry level to the AMG family. It's now the one that sits under the C43 that we reviewed recently, and it is the AMG A35 4MATIC hatchback. And it's a really, really interesting car. Here it's finished in denim blue metallic, which is a new color, with some other details that I'll go over later. But first let's talk about this car, because it's going to be the cheapest AMG that money can buy, but by no means should we underestimate this car because of it. Because from what I've seen and read, this could be the entry-level AMG that has the most true AMG or flagship AMG DNA within it. Now this one, as I said, is edition 1. It's a shame that we didn't get the yellow beast that they showed in the preview pictures here at Paris, but what we can at least do is save that particular one for the full review later this year. So back in 2012, AMG released their first hot hatch, and it was the AMG A45, or the A45 AMG as it was then before the name swap. And we were all skeptical of that car. I certainly was, because how could a 4-pot AMG be anywhere near as exciting as the V8 ones that we were used to? And this was a true AMG. It was hand-built engine out of Falterbach. So boy, were we all proven wrong. That ended up being one of the most exciting AMGs that you could ever own. It had the right sound, it had the right feel, the ownership experience, the aero pack that we got, and everything just screamed AMG. It was like a mini little C63 Black Series back then in terms of the look. So I think we've all learnt our lesson not to doubt AMG when they are excited about a new hatchback. So let's start with this car then. Let's take it from the ground. Let's go back to the original A-Class that we reviewed earlier this year. And now if we put the A35 on top of it, you can see how aggressive it is. But it also looks very similar to the current A45 if we look at it. And that, you'll see a theme in this video as I go along, because the similarities don't end there. So let's start with those similarities. First of all, you've got a lot of the DNA as the current entry-level cars have, like the C43 and the E53 that we recently reviewed. So you've got the AMG twin bar grille, which has come from, like the A45 and the previous C63, into the entry-level cars now. Gives it a very distinctive look immediately. So whether you have aero pack or not, if it's got this, you know from the front end, it is an entry-level AMG. Then you look at the rest of the car, we've got, again, things from those entry-level cars shared here. We've got the aerodynamic flick on the front mouth here. We've got the gloss-colored inserts in the rest of the front mouth. But the A35 makes it even more aggressive with an extended lower splitter and canards on the side, both finished in gloss black. And they look almost identical. In fact, they are pretty much identical, at least in concept, to the ones we have on the current A45. And then you look at the side, we've got an extended side sill, now with a gloss black insert, depending if you have night pack or not, just like you have in the C63S. We've of course got multi-spoke alloy wheels from AMG as well. These ones are finished in a two-tone with satin gold and a silver fascia. You can even see the AMG braking system behind that, but I'll get onto that aspect later. Then we come to the rear, and oh boy, is the rear an exciting place for this car. Of course, you see the aerodynamic packages, big wing on the rear, very reminiscent of the A45, but slightly redesigned in this case, and it gives this car a real AMG look straight from the outset. But then, one of the most surprising things for me was to see the rear diffuser. Extremely aggressive, very similar to the A45. It's got much of the design as we see in the C63 facelift recently. It looks super, super aggressive and suits the size and the shape of this A-Class immensely well. Then we've got extra aero flicks on the rear bumper, which are even more aggressive than the current A45. But my absolute favorite bit of the rear are the exhaust tips. There's two single round exhausts. They're really large. They remind me in design of the AMG GTS, very reminiscent of the dual pipes you get in the 43 and the 53, but single ones. But these have a cover around them with a certain texture that make them look slightly larger. Like I said, a bit more like GT. And so the final result is an extremely aggressive looking rear end, an extremely aggressive looking side, a really aggressive looking front. And overall, it's a car that basically looks like an updated version of the current A45, a true full-blood AMG. But the similarities with the A45 don't end there. It's actually really, really similar under the skin as well. So let's dive into that aspect, starting first with the engine. This has also got a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine in this car, just like in the A45, but this one is based on the Mercedes-Benz engine from the A250. So it's the M260 engine, but this one has a twin-scroll turbocharger, just like in the E63. It's thus more efficient, it manages exhaust gases in a more efficient way, and ultimately gives you more responsive and better performance. This engine delivers 306 brake horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque, and it's 4.7 seconds 0 to 60, means it's only 0.1 of a second away from the original A45. So this is a seriously quick car, given the fact that it's an entry-level AMG. It also has a 7-speed DCT speed shift transmission, just like the A45 had. And when in Sport Plus, when downshifting, you've got double declutching. And it even has a partial cylinder cutoff to give you a nice little bang when you change gear. But it goes a stage beyond that. As we said with the brakes, it's got the same size and format of brakes as the A45. And it's also got a very similar formatic system. You know what I'm going to say now. It basically runs the exact same way as the A45. Either it's front-wheel drive, or there's a 50-50 power split between the front and the rear, and the car will decide how best to use that depending on what mode you're in and how you're driving. But again, it goes beyond that, because this has stuff that the A45 doesn't have. It's got AMG dynamics from the latest C63. So it's got 2 different modes there, which automatically change depending on what mode you're in, but it makes the car either more comfortable or more dynamic when you're driving. But it also has 3-stage adaptive suspension, which the A45 didn't have. So it can go from Comfort, Sport and Sport Plus automatically as you're shifting through the modes. So this is taking that car a step beyond. Yes, not with the same power, but with similar speed and a similar format. But we'll have to see how that plays out when we do the full road review of the A35 later this year, probably in December. But I know what you're thinking. Where does this now leave the replacement A45, the main flagship? Because that's yet to come. This is not a replacement of that car, no matter what it sounds like. Is that just going to have more power? Because that's just boring, right? Rest assured that's not the case. At Paris, Tobias Moore's AMG CEO talked a little bit about the A45, and we can meld those things together with the rumors we've heard. And he said on a technical basis, it's unrecognizable compared to the previous car, that it was more of a sideways car. But what do we know from the rumors? If you look at what this car is actually going to be, it's really exciting. So of course the design is going to change. We've done some renders here on RBR. You can expect the Panamericana grille, as with all flagship cars, a more wide front end compared to the 35. Of course, you'll have AMG specific wheels and perhaps a more aggressive aero kit. And of course, the rear will have quad exhaust as opposed to the 2 exhausts here, a different diffuser, etc., etc. But it goes beyond that. That car will also have, likely based on Mr. Moore's comments, 4MATIC Plus with drift mode, which is really exciting, straight out of the E63S. It'll probably also have an 8-speed transmission as opposed to the 7-speed to better handle the torque. And the engine will be a completely new engine, which has in part allegedly been designed by the AMG hypercar team of the AMG 1 in Brixworth, with a bit of EQ hybrid support, a bit of a boost in there. And it will of course be a hand-built one-man, one-engine engine. So that car is looking like a completely different car. And you're wondering power. Power is meant to be well over 400 brake horsepower. So now you can see there is plenty of room for this A35 to exist when the flagship A45 and allegedly A45S are yet to come in a much more powerful guise. But now we have to get on to the Edition 1, as I promised. So we've got the Edition 1 here finished in denim blue metallic, which I love. I love this color. I'm not fond of the other details. So we've got motorsport livery, the typical AMG Edition 1 style ones, which is finished in a satin gold or a satin champagne. Same with the wheels. We've got silver with satin champagne and gold, and you've got satin champagne. I'm just going to say gold now because that's getting really annoying. We've got gold motorsport livery on the wing mirrors as well. And inside, I'll show you some of the Edition 1 bits when we climb in. So overall, it's a cross between something that's meant to be classy and something that's, well, a little bit chavvy. So it's not my personal preference, to be honest. Maybe it would have looked better with black rather than the denim blue, or I don't know. I just preferred the way AMGs used to do Edition 1s before. But if we scrap the whole Edition 1 thing for a second and just look at the options you can get on the normal car, you can make it look quite cool. So you can get rid of the aero pack. You can have the different colored wheels, either the multi-spokes or the ones like we apparently get in the 53s and the 43s. Those look quite good. I would, of course, have aero pack. I really want to see the yellow, but there's other shades that you can get as well. So you can make this look as classy or as understated as you want. It's got quite a lot of options, which is great to see in an AMG. I'd love to know what you guys think about the wing, whether you think it deserves it. I think it really does, because it's trying to be, and it is a lot like the previous A45. But now I think, to look at the interior, we best go back to the motor show. I don't want to get in trouble. We've been gone a while. So guys, we're inside the Edition 1 of the A35. We just had a look at the outside. So the first thing that hits you is the new AMG steering wheel, as you get with all the entry level and the big 63 cars. This one has, of course, got that lovely Project One style gear selector. MBUX has been edited for AMG as well, but we'll get onto that. The other thing that sets the 35 apart immediately is you can get performance seats just like the 63s, and I absolutely love these seats, as you guys know. They bring the design up a notch and they're really comfortable. Inside here, there's a few things different to the normal A35. First of all, the thing that'll hit you is you've got AMG, I guess, motorsport decals on the front, silver trim here. On the steering wheel itself, it's all Napa leather. You guys know I'm not a fan of. I prefer my Alcantara Dynamica. So I think they're going for like a classy spec, but mixing it with motorsport livery is confusing things. We've also got AMG Edition written here. Apart from that, the main kind of difference that you will feel is the blue on the inside here. So where the piping is normally black, we've got blue piping here, I guess to match the denim blue exterior. But everything else is pretty much as it was before. Looking further in here, if you look at the screen, we've actually now got the Supersport display that you'll remember I mentioned in the C63S review and the C43 review. The E53 doesn't even have this yet, so it's in the entry-level A35. But it's a bit different in this car. All the dials have been redesigned to look a lot more like AMG branding, and I'm going to show you some of them now. You can change the bits in the middle now, which you could not before, so there's different options for the main rev counter, including attention assist and those kind of bits. But the actual turbo and boost looks so much cooler on each side now. I'm glad I got the key and actually turned the car on. The other bits are your usual design changes. So this is Super Sport. We can go to Sport, which looks like the usual Sport with the two dials, black and yellow. And then we've got Classic, which is a classic Mercedes-Benz style. And interestingly, when I was looking in MBUX, you'll remember, if you've seen my A-Class review, how there were themes. Well, you get themes now in AMG as well, and you can see the Red Sow, the S-Class, the classic AMG in there. And this is really piquing my interest as to what are we going to see in the actual A45 when it comes. How is MBUX going to tie with that? Can I tell the car, I want you to drive more sporty, and it'll change the theme and do all that kind of stuff? That would be really cool. Plus, I also want to say, hey AMG instead of hey Mercedes. I doubt that will happen, but one can wish, can't they? The other bits we've got in here, we've got AMG-specific apps inside MBUX. So we've got Track Pace, and we've got AMG Performance, which you can go in here and you can change all of your dynamic select stuff as you normally would, individual configuration. So we've got the engine itself, reduce, moderate, sport, dynamic. This is all like you'd see in the C63. We've got manual or drive, which is the usual bits. You've got AMG Dynamics, like in the C63S as well. So basic and advanced, and that changes your steering and your suspension and the way the car handles. Then we've got suspension as well, which you've got Comfort Sport and Sport Plus. All of this in an entry-level AMG. It's pretty awesome. Then in Track Pace, the great thing about it in A-Class is that you actually get the AR navigation, which I showed you in that review. So the camera comes up, you see what's in front of the car. But if you're on the Nürburgring, it will give you racing line, the correct racing line for you to follow. How awesome is that? You can go on the main tracks in the world get racing line thanks to the AR navigation. This is good use of technology in a sports car where you're using the latest technology to help the driver be a better driver and be a faster driver. I absolutely love these little touches. Obviously TrackPace still has your 0 to 60s, your lap times, and it can all be saved to your driver profile, etc, etc. But we're just now touching the I think it's the tip of the iceberg as far as this can go in the further cars. And I'll be really fascinated to see how this develops in future AMGs as well. The other thing you'll notice now, I don't know which markets these will be available in, but we've got the Project One style dynamic select switches on the steering wheel. Now these are reserved at the moment for only the flagship AMGs like the GT4-door, the new C63S, etc. I don't even think the G-Wagon has it, but this is here in the A35, and this really says to me that they're taking this car seriously. So you can go and you've got your Comfort, Sport Plus selector on this side, and you've of course also got your two shortcuts that you can set here. So it can be anything. At the moment we've got suspension and drive mode, but you can configure that as you like. Unfortunately there's no exhaust button in this car, it's all done automatically. And I do see signs of a exhaust button in the preview video AMG put up, so maybe there's some hope for that still. The center console bit, actually it's all redesigned compared to the normal A-Class as well. I didn't realize that. Looks a lot more substantial here. But yeah, this has been really interesting. So let's see what this A35 is like later in the year. I hope you guys enjoy this. It's been really good to see in the flesh, and I'm really excited not only for this car but for the A45. What is that going to be like when they're so confident about this car, when they've taken it to the nth degree on the interior and the exterior? That must be a beast to set itself apart. So exciting times for the hatchbacks of AMG. So please do like and subscribe, and I will, as always, see you guys soon.